Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Awesome.
The green
My light's on. It
yeah,
just doesn't seem like it's. We'll do our prayer and our pledge at the 6 o'clock meeting. First item, our second consent agenda, approval of the July 18th, 2024 council minutes. Any changes, corrections, comments on those minutes? Hearing none, I entertain a motion we approve the consent agenda.
So move. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. Item 3, first discussion action item, consideration of resolution 24-24, approving agreement with Groove Technology Solutions for radio infrastructure upgrade. Chief Story, please.
Just to give you a quick rundown of this. Hello. Just to give you a quick overview of this, so basically in our building here, with the internal size of it, we have a radio signal boosting technology in the building. It's based on the date of the building and when it was installed. It's basically out of the ability to upgrade to the existing frequencies that we're going to. The state's switching over in October to what they call the P25 system. It goes from 800 megahertz that we're on now to a 700 megahertz system. The system that we currently have in the building is not compatible with going to the 700 megahertz. We started looking at this with David a month or two ago and reaching out to some companies to try to get somebody in. When we got them in to do a site survey of the building, they determined that basically everything that goes along with that system other than the cables that are in the walls are not compatible. So, before even this packet, it kind of lays out what all those upgrades would be, but basically on October 23rd, when the state plans to cut over Weber County, ourselves as well as the police department will lose frequency on the radios, and they won't work inside the buildings anymore. That includes our paging systems and our radios that we use for communications with dispatch and things. So if you guys have any questions on top of that.
Questions for Deputy Chief?
So how do we access the radios then? We don't use them or what?
So the radios that we have, if we, I don't think there's any in this room on this side of the building, but throughout the building, there's antennas that stick down through the ceiling. If we bring in a handheld radio or our paging systems that are over on the other side and upstairs, they won't get frequency from the towers that are located up on the mountain and stuff to receive those. And so basically without the system, they just won't operate and have the frequencies. They program the device itself that's on the wall. They program our channel frequencies that are in the county going forward into that system, so it boosts those channels throughout the building continuously until we activate a radio, and then it picks it up.
So they've really forced our hand. I mean, it's either have no service
The new
or
system
do
that they're
this.
putting in is compatible now and going forward in October, so at that October 23rd cutover date, they'll just come in and switch it to 700, and it'll work just fine, according to them. So,
Chief, do you have a lifespan on the new system or anything? And I mean, you have the cost in the packet, but I just don't know how long this
I
will
do
last.
not have a lifespan. I was actually just reading through it to see what the warranty and stuff on it was, but I have a hard time reading the verbiage in it. So,
Lawyers.
the one that we currently have is with the building construction originally. So I assume 15, 20 years.
2004. Yeah.
As long as they don't update the frequencies again or changes the plan. And
Well, that was kind of my next question: is does this have the capability? This system have the capability to be expanded if they change it again?
That I do not know for sure, but I know from what their explanation is, it's 800, 700 compatible. So if it goes outside of those two parameters, it may not be. So.
And we have purchased, received, and all the new radios are programmed.
Yep.
We're just
all
waiting
the radios
for
are ready to rock, and
switch.
just when the 23rd of October is the cutover in the county. So, and then it'll either work then or not work then. So.
Yeah, please.
Do you do a test on it, how our radio's going to respond to it?
They did a test cutover in April in the county, but not inside of our building at all. And so the system itself is ready to go, and they've started switching people over, starting down in the southern end of the state, and they're working their way up. So as far as I know, it is working and going through the processes, but they won't be in Weber County until
So my question was, is this, this provider, they did our system originally, correct?
Yes, sounds like
And
it.
are they on the state purchasing?
The details that we looked at and found out with them is that they currently are not, but a vendor that they use for the products potentially is. Yeah, we have the ability to go through that contract, but it's on a side vendor from Groove, is the way that they work that out, and they, so.
I guess the reason I asked is because I wonder, the indication was that this was the only bid that we received, and I just wondered if we could have received others had we gone through the state purchasing.
We did kind of investigate that, and we worked with David and IT a lot on that, because reaching out to all the companies and agencies that we could find and track down that do these, none of them would return phone calls and get back to us or contact anything. We couldn't really find any other people to give us any bids.
Which is interesting to me because it seems like everybody else is having to switch over too, so.
Yeah, and the direction that we got from Groove was that we're one of the agencies that's kind of reached out ahead of time. They expect a lot more to start calling them now, kind of figuring out that these systems aren't going to potentially work. Was kind of one of the discussions that we had, so.
So if we approve this
They're
now,
anticipating a little bit of a boost in
we can get done back
potential
to it.
clientele in the next couple of months when
I
they
see.
start kind of reaching out, so.
I just think that, I mean, this is a necessary thing that we have to do now. There's no doubt about it. But going forward, we need to look at a company that offers the next step without having to go to another company to do it. So maybe when we research, we need to research that and make sure that
Okay.
that happens.
Sounds good, yep.
okay, entertain a motion to approve resolution 24-24.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? It's a roll call vote because it's a resolution. Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Howard,
Yes.
Councilmember Smythe,
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens,
Yes.
Councilmember Howe.
Yes.
Thank you. First discussion item is the Fingerboard Skate Park. Mr. Dixon, if you'll introduce this, please.
Yeah, while you guys get
Nonsensical.
plugged in and set up, I will just tee this up. I don't know, it's been a month or so ago, maybe a little longer now. I was contacted by Spencer Oakey, and this gentleman here who will introduce himself shortly. Reached out, said, hey, excited about the new skate park, would love to talk to you about fingerboarding. And I'll admit, I had no idea what he was talking about, and I said, we need to meet and chat, because you need to paint me a picture, and we did, and had a good conversation. I better understood kind of what they're requesting, and afterwards said, hey, I think now is a great time for the council to consider this, because we're under construction at the skate park. It wouldn't take a whole lot to accommodate their request through a change order to add a little more concrete somewhere around that park. And I'm not going to steal any thunder, so I will let you, Spencer, introduce your friend, and go ahead and just. I told you I have about 15 minutes for this, and so we'll go till about what's that, 25 after.
Thank you. Is the projector going?
Oh, it was. Let's see if it went to sleep.
Well, first off, thank you. I think we could have Matt come up here and share even more. He's got quite a bit of info. Council, Mayor, we're grateful for your time. As Matt said, my name is Spencer Oakey, and this is Clark. Let Clark just introduce himself real quick.
Yeah, I'm Clark Checkitz. I'm the owner and founder of Dude Guy Fingerboards. I live in Ogden. I've been fingerboarding since I was in middle school, and been running this business for the last 3 years or so. I'd love to just pass around some show and tell items while we're talking, if that's okay.
That is okay.
This is a cement curb I made, and this is a fingerboard. Oh no! Oh no! Sweaty fingers.
Yeah, I hear them in the back of my classroom quite often.
Yeah, you guys may see them and know them as something that's slightly bothersome or annoying, but we're excited about them. So
That's just because they don't have a place to go yet.
They don't.
Practicing.
Like Clark said, he talked a little bit about what he's done. My name's Spencer Oakey, and I've got a brand, BKB Crete, where I build obstacles and fingerboard parts. But we wanted to show you today a little bit about fingerboarding and what we're excited about. So fingerboarding really took off, showed up in the 90s. When I was in junior high, they really started to take off. One of the most popular places for fingerboarding is in Berlin. It's like the mecca of fingerboarding, the ASI Berlin shop. And during the pandemic, there was a resurgence. I actually got back into it during the pandemic with my own sons. They got some toys, some very cheap plastic toys, and I'm very much a creator, and in my head I said, you know what, I can make something better than that, and that's where it started for me, was to make something for my sons.
And just to give some more background, more specific to our area, fingerboard history, about 2 years ago, I'd been fingerboarding for a long time, and I realized there were lots of cool events going on around the states, and I was like, surely there are other fingerboarders in Utah, but I couldn't find anything on the internet like that said this is where Utah fingerboarding events happened. So I just started posting everywhere saying I'm going to do events. And first event we had like 2 or 3 people show up, and all my siblings or my wife that came to support me. But then the next one it was like 10 and then 30, and it's really grown and blown up. So it's been a super supportive community. We just recently, this picture with the medals, we just recently had our first sanctioned event from the USA Fingerboard League, where it was competitive and the winners got ranked in the system. We have over 100 members online that are Utah specific fingerboarders, and that's just people who are on Instagram and able to join the chat. We'll usually get 50 to 70 people anywhere for events. Most of our events, this central picture here, are hosted at a company called Space Station. I'll talk about them a little bit later. But just now, this summer, we've started to see a lot of other entities starting to get into fingerboarding. The big hotel chain Pendry in Park City is hosting an event actually this Saturday. And then we're going to be at the Wheelers Farmers Market as our 801 fingerboarding entity on Sunday, just talking to people about fingerboarding and trying to find people who are probably into fingerboarding but didn't know there were other fingerboarders out there. And there's also a skate shop down in Salt Lake City that's going to be doing an event. So having these all these other entities get involved is super cool and exciting. And we did the Wheelers Farmers Market, let's see, it was a couple months ago as well. This will be our second time. And it was so fun to see people come up, whether they were like, oh, I fingerboarded when I was a kid, or I'm actually currently fingerboarding, I didn't know there were people, or they had no idea about fingerboarding, but they were just in love with the miniatures and the small recreations of skate spots and things like that. So it was really fun to get to meet people who didn't know anything about fingerboarding and to talk about it. We have a lot of local brands here. This is barely scratching the surface of all the people who are out in Utah specifically. This is just Utah specific brands. And there's at least 4 or 5 more successful ones and a lot of other people who are just doing it for fun that, aren't listed here. Spencer, BKB Crete, he'll talk a little more about his stuff. Like I mentioned, I am DGFB, Dude Guy Fingerboards. I have gotten really well known for making fingerboard wheels out of old skateboard wheels. So I'll drill out the urethane from the skateboard wheel and shape it down and put a bearing in. And so I make primarily wheels. Those are some of my wheels on that skateboard and a deck I made. We also have a local concrete company that I just acquired actually called Level Edges. So they're specializing in making concrete obstacles, which will come in handy as we're, trying to build more parks. And then Skate Station, this company I mentioned, Space Station. I won't go into the whole history of it. But they are just making a foray into fingerboarding, and they have a lot of resources behind them, and they're really excited about it. We're going to have a physical location here pretty soon. That's my phone. I'll let you take the next slide.
Sounds good. I want to reiterate too real quickly, Clark I don't think gave himself enough credit in his wheels. He makes these recycled wheels, and they are insanely popular. He has tried various ways to make it fair and equitable for people to purchase them, because there's such a demand when they see that they can get their true branded skateboard wheel now in a fingerboard wheel. They sell out like that. It's pretty amazing. All right, so as I said, BKB, those are my kids' names, Bell, Kyle, Brigham. Hence the name, the inspiration in making parks. But these are some of the parks that I've made. That big one right there, I've called it Rooftopia. I played Tony Hawk when I was a kid, a skateboarding game, and it was something I envisioned where Tony Hawk would be skating on the rooftops. This right here, I incorporated lights, so this is like a skylight. There is a outdoor light here as well. And then this is to look like, I lived in New Jersey for 2 years, and we went on the rooftops, and there were the water towers up on the rooftops back east. And so that was my inspiration for this park. This one here is a concrete park that I'm currently building right now. Oh, okay, so these are both 5 by 3 feet. Some of them can be smaller. Yeah, probably just, it would fit on this table here.
These are all portable.
Yes, yep. This one is made mostly of wood with some other metal incorporated. And then this one here, the concept is to use foam to lighten it, so it's not all concrete. So the white you see here is foam. But then if you look on this image over here, it honestly looks just like the park you guys have going outside, because there's rebar. I use mini wire and chicken wire. This is chicken wire right here. And then this is brake line that I've bent to make that coping for the skateboards to grind on that metal edge. So as you guys look out there, you'll see the spikes sticking up out of the ground supporting that piece of metal. That's exactly what I've incorporated. Taken everything and just scaled it down to about a 1/8 to 1/12 scale. And then this is a decorative rock wall that you might see on, outside of your house. I've got mini rocks and glued them together, and it's on the back side of this. So not only do I make it functional and make it smooth, I love adding the details and make it look really good as well. Well, I think it looks good. So for the concept, as we looked at where the skateboard park was going to go, we envisioned possibly adding a pad of concrete right here and making it all access friendly for kids, people in wheelchairs, anybody to access, and also having various heights. So you can see the profile view here, have a lower area for someone who's either in a wheelchair or a child, and then having some higher areas that you can get to with ramps and with stair sets as well. And the best part about this is it would be no cost to South Ogden City, other than what Matt had mentioned of pouring that flat pad. With our resources, we'd be able to pull together, have what we need to essentially build the park, and then we would come and anchor it to that pad so that it's there and everybody can come and enjoy it. Anything else to add to that, Paul?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to this this last slide. I mentioned Skate Station in passing. Skate Station is run by Sean McBride, a local YouTuber who's got just a lot of great ideas, and he came to me a little while ago and said he wanted to start a fingerboard brand. And between us, he has a lot of money that he just wants to invest in fun things, and so he wants to back this project. And in fact, he's talked a lot about getting fingerboard parks just like this all up and down Utah. So I think this is a cool time, especially for South Ogden. It just made sense with the park going in. We're both here local, and it would be a really cool opportunity to have this be the first one before we do any others as an example to other cities. And I truly believe, in fact, just on Sunday, someone from Denver came to town and said, hey, where can I go check out a fingerboard park? And I was like, well, we don't have a public one yet, but I can let you come over and use mine. So people travel, and they're well connected in the fingerboard community, and it's just a lot of people who want to do this. It's just a fun hobby. The scale is perfect for having it in your backyard or in your pocket or whatever. And, washed up skaters who break their feet, they just fingerboard now. So, yeah, we're happy to answer questions or elaborate on anything.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I were a fingerboarder, do I purchase the skate from you, or what happens there? How do
So-
they get the equipment and?
So I love that you asked that, because we actually had the idea that we would love to have leave a fingerboard, take a fingerboard, kind of like the community book boxes that you see where you can put a book in and take a book,
Interesting.
and have a spot for fingerboards there. But kids and anybody could go to Target or Walmart, spend $10 and get a very simple one. Or you can get some that are truly made like a real fingerboard with bearings. They're made of wood. They have custom graphics, and spend more if you want to spend more.
At Target, and where?
No,
I
that
mean,
would be custom
that
through
would- Through,
like Clark's Wheels and some of the connections that we have. But if they just wanted a very simple to start, yeah, Target, Walmart, somewhere like that.
And this skate station brand we're starting up is going to be focused on getting people into fingerboarding, affordable, quality fingerboards. Whereas right now you kind of have a $3 tech deck you can get from Walmart, or you could spend $150 on something like that, which I know sounds like a lot, but people who get really into it are totally fine investing in their hobby like that. And there's not a really great middle ground, so that's what we're focusing on for people getting started.
I think the advantage that we would have, since we would have a fingerboard skate park here, is that if we could locate a place in South Ogden that would open up to a retail outlet, so to speak, and then they could correspond to this type of a site
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Working
Have-
with local skate shops has worked really well, so it's not South Ogden, but we could always work with Crossroads. Just in Ogden.
Yeah.
So,
So really the ask is, was the council willing to
Yeah, and I think.
change the project a little bit to add another pad of concrete?
Yeah, and now after going out there and looking at the ground under construction, we might have to go revisit kind of the location, because that's where the outlet is for the detention basin.
Yeah.
So we just thought conceptually that was kind of an idea. It may or may not work out great to be right next to the skate park. Maybe it's over by the Bowery or, somewhere else. But we thought while the contractor is here and they're going to be pouring a lot of concrete in the near future, do we want to, put a pad down? In talking to Spencer about just kind of, well, what's the risk for the city? We spend some money to pour a concrete pad. They come, they put the table, and it's, the intent isn't that it would be a temporary, take it home, bring it, set up. It would be a permanent, like, hey, this is a fingerboard park, and you can come and enjoy it whenever you want. Worst case scenario, if the hobby goes away or the groups lose interest and it's not getting used, we take the table out and you have a pad of concrete to put a picnic table on or use for something else. So I don't know that there's a huge
No
risk
really.
to the city other than just, a few $1,000s or whatever the concrete would cost. And I think we would talk about how big a pad.
So when we looked into it, you can see the park, we projected to be 12 by 4 feet. And then if we had a minimum of 4 feet around each edge, that would be enough to accommodate. And so that would be if you've got your
20 by
20 by
12?
yes, would be the minimum, yeah.
So, Mayor,
Please.
Matt, question, and maybe for Spencer and the team up here. Building that table is obviously a cool concept. My question is, if who maintains it? What happens if it gets damaged? The nuts pull out of the base of it. Somebody sits on it and knocks the whole dang thing over. Like, who's going to be responsible for that?
Great question, thank you. So I'm working with a structural engineer on the table and what that would look like so that it falls under, I don't even want to pretend I know because I don't, but safety categories, right? But skate station, space station would be responsible to fix it, maintain it if there was an issue or something like that. And on building it, we would build it in a workshop, et cetera, and transport it here and then mount it so that it's ready to go, and then the concrete pad would be there, put the anchor bolts in and be ready to use.
So that may necessitate an MOU or something
Yes,
to.
thank you. I think that's a great idea, and that's what we'd probably do is have just a maintenance agreement
Okay.
between Space Station and the city that would spell all this out to say,
Yes.
hey, look, these are the,
Yes.
good idea. I guess next step, if the council is supportive conceptually, is we'll get a little more serious about the actual location.
The actual
and then
cost.
get the actual cost from the contractor to say, what would this add as a change order to pour?
Could we get a ramp grant for that?
How much
It's a
Clark's
separate
business
thing.
partner wants to pay for concrete?
Yeah. Again, if conceptually the council's like, not interested, fine, there's no more discussion. But we didn't want to go further.
I'm nodding.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got at least 3 nods.
Can we put it on our ramp as one of the items
Could,
for a
but
ramp
that would
project?
put us those are due in January. We'd find out in like March. We'd get the money in like April, May. So,
It's not
I don't-
feasible.
yeah, I don't think that's
Okay.
the best route at this point.
Yeah, and we couldn't use current ramp funds because
Right.
this was not a part of our application.
Okay.
So, but again, it's a $1.5 million park, and to add $1,000 in concrete.
Concrete, yeah.
$1,000 is $1,000. I don't want to minimize that, but it's a pretty minimal
To bring
change order.
to bring
I'm assuming $1,000 too, right? I have no idea
bring
the cost of concrete. So it
50
might be up in the
I,
nice.
it's probably 3 or 4 grand, because I just
Okay,
had my
all right.
driveway,
Yeah.
estimate.
Okay.
20, what is, 20 by 12? Probably, yeah, it's probably 7 or 8.
About 3,000.
Okay.
Easy.
I was like 12
Yeah.
grand for my driveway.
that's
Sure,
still not.
sure. Well, we'll talk to our YouTube friend, and we'll see what we can.
Right.
See what we
For
can
sure.
That's
piece
not a
together,
big deal.
so. Okay.
Yeah,
we'll
let's
go-
pursue that,
we'll-
please.
Yeah, we'll go to the next step then and get more details and come back.
Awesome. Council Mayor, thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
I think the best thing is
Presentation.
to educate the public, because if someone asked me about a finger skate park, I wouldn't know
Your
anything
grandkids
about
know
it.
about it.
Yeah, there's,
But I think the public education
I used to do it in high school.
aspect is
Did you?
very crucial.
That was when
here.
tech decks were cool. Apparently they're
Yeah.
cheap and crappy now. That's
Yeah,
true.
Everything evolves.
Everyone else planning to do the finger-
All right, Mr. Dixon, talk to us about the senior spending with the county.
Thank you, Mayor.
He does.
So in an effort to not go through the whole discussion about senior centers in the county, I think you're all aware of the many meetings that have happened over many months and the direction that this is headed. The most recent decision by the county commissioners, who are they are the board of Weber Human Services. They wear 2 hats. So according to the board of Weber Human Services, they are not going to continue to increase funding to support the current number of senior centers. Basically, the direction from the commissioners to Weber Human Services is, this is the amount we're going to contribute, and you guys need to make it work. Well, no surprise to anyone that the cost of providing those services continues to go up. Senior center services or senior services are heavily funded by state and federal grants. That, it's my understanding from the conversations, and the mayor had a presentation last night at WACOG, is those grant sources are either diminishing or they're certainly not increasing. All of that has led the county through Human Services to say, we need to consolidate more centers. And they're asking the 5 centers that currently are in operation basically to submit a proposal to say, hey, we're willing to continue to keep the buildings, keep them up to date, and pay the utilities. And if you'll continue to provide the funding that you're currently providing, we'll add to the pot to continue providing senior services. So Washington Terrace, where let me back up for those of you who haven't been here as long. Several years ago, when our senior center was closed, the message to us from Weber Human Services was, we're not going to be the ones to say we're okay with you closing your center, because they didn't want to take the political heat. So behind the scenes, Weber Human Services was absolutely supportive, because they had been talking about consolidating centers for years, but just hadn't really got around to it. When we closed our center, the funding that was coming to our center from the county, Weber Human Services, then went to Washington Terrace to say, okay, it's most likely your seniors are going to go to the terrace, your funding will go there. So it's not like we just walked away. We knew that the funding would still be available for our seniors through Washington Terrace. So these cities, like Washington Terrace, Roy, Ogden, North Ogden, and Pleasant View share a center.
Riverdale.
Riverdale, thank you. They're all trying to put together their proposals. Washington Terrace did submit one to Weber Human Services. Weber Human Services now has responded to Washington Terrace and said, hey, just so you know, Pleasant View and North Ogden have partnered in their center. Pleasant View contributes 12,000. It was in my report from Weber Human Services. Around 12, maybe it was $17,000 that Pleasant View contributes to North Ogden to continue operating their center. Weber Human Services has kind of said, hey, Washington Terrace, if you want to try to work out something similar with South Ogden, that might help your chances of your center continuing. The plan right now is no changes in senior center operations until July of next year. So beginning fiscal year 2026, whatever centers are going to be operating will be operating, and there may be some that close. Again, that's what everybody's trying to figure out. With that in mind, Washington Terrace would like to know, South Ogden, are you able and willing to contribute some funding to help their chances, I should say, of keeping their center open? And when I say open, they're looking at 5 days a week for, so many hours a day, and looking at that. So that's where this issue is at for South Ogden. The question would be, well, if we say no, there still might be a chance Washington Terrace Center stays open. Like, nobody knows at this point. Mayor, anything you want to add from your presentations?
It would
Or
really hurt.
Councilmember Smythe was also
It would really hurt
involved in-
Washington Terrace's chances if we did not agree to pay some each year.
And I'll confess, there's a little bit of humble pie on my side, because I've been pretty vocal about how I feel, and I hope I didn't misrepresent any of your feelings, but because I was involved in the meetings, it was a little frustrating for me to see what little additional funding the county would have to come up with to continue to provide the services at the current levels. It's a drop in the bucket in their very big budget.
And I expressed that last night at the meeting, too.
Were they at all receptive to that?
No, they
How
feel like
much are
they're
they
already
paying?
paying more than, they pay over $1 million a year, the county does.
Just the Washington Terrace one?
No, they
or-
pay $1 million a year to Weber Human Services
Human
for
Services.
senior services, but that gets diluted to the ride, Meals on
Meals.
Wheels, the centers, so it's,
Are they willing to swap property for it? I know a parcel up there would be willing to trade Washington Terrace for it.
So I mentioned humble pie because I've really been vocal in pushing back on the county, saying, we're trying to provide police and fire and keep our streets paved, and for you to just take what historically has been a county-provided service and say,
Yeah,
we're
no.
done. Cities, if you want to continue it, it's on you.
in other counties,
Right.
it's run by the county, their
In other
senior
counties,
centers.
right.
100%.
In Davis County, this county owns the buildings. They have 3, but they're also half the square miles we are.
Yeah.
Lots more population, but half the square miles. So the county runs 3 centers, runs it solely. In most counties, it's the same way.
So the Washington Terrace services all of this area, Riverdale, and,
So Riverdale has their
Okay.
own center, and
okay.
the seniors can go wherever they want.
Yeah, and they've taken roll. They come from all
So,
over.
Yeah, the seniors go to any center in the county that they want to, and so you'd never really know, right, where they might choose to go depending on their friends or family.
So
Or what
basically,
programs.
Or what
Yeah.
programs.
So even though we don't like how this has come down and how it should be to help our seniors have a place close, we believe it's worth paying some to help the terrace keep that open.
Do we know the usage, like how many South Ogden residents are going there?
never
Yeah,
kept
that was brought up a
track.
couple
Yes.
of meetings ago, but it's,
Keep track.
Because if I'm not mistaken, when we leveled the senior center here and developed that, one of the reasonings was it wasn't being utilized. I mean, it was, if I remember, there was only sometimes 1 or 2 people a day, if that. They'd go a day or 2 without seeing somebody. And then what's the ask, Matt?
It's whatever you want to contribute. Weber Human Services provided kind of a rough analysis to say, well, if you took
17.
this and it cost us so much for staffing, the difference that would be needed to fill, I think it was $15,000,
15 to 17 is,
something
that's
like
when we met. That's what they were, and I'll tell you, I agree with Mr. Dixon about how the county kind of backstepped, didn't they, as far as providing? They didn't want to contribute anymore, and I think, gosh, why? When they're paying all these people, and they've got a ton of people working on this, and they all get salaries, and I'm sure their salaries aren't minimal, and yet we can't provide for the seniors through the county. Just doesn't seem appropriate.
Councilmember Stewart?
I guess one of the concerns I have is that they're saying X number now, right? But it's going to go up. And it could go up exponentially where they'd be like, well, look, you're already doing some, you might as well just take it over, right?
Like everything else,
And-
you had the cost of inflation.
Right.
You're right. There's a good chance.
And the truth of the matter is that our population is aging, not getting any younger, right? So that's gonna be, and when we talk about how much usage there is, well, part of that depends on the programming. I know that, cause I've got a friend who lives 4 blocks, 6 blocks from me, but they go all the way to North Ogden, Northview, because there's a specific program that they want to go to, and that's a special part of their every single week, right? You know, and so, anyway.
I think Councilmember Stewart raises a really valid point that $15,000 next year could easily grow over time, where I could just see the county saying, oh, we didn't get as much federal grant monies as we had hoped. Cities, if you want to continue, but, I mean, I guess there's always a choice in the future for us to say,
That's it.
we can't contribute anymore. But again, that's my frustration, is the county's putting this on us to make us be the bad guys, to say, oh, sorry, seniors, we're choosing to cut your service, and they should be taking those bullets, and I shouldn't say that. Can't say that in
You
this
should say that.
environment. They should be taking the heat. Not the cities, but again, like the mayor said, if we want to try to help keep the Terrace Center available for our residents, if the Terrace Center closes and they choose to keep Riverdale, the idea would be right now, if they go to 3, there'd be a south, something in the middle, and something at the north. So you've got Roy, Riverdale, and the Terrace on the south end. So it's possible 2 of those 3 could close. So I guess it's possible if the Terrace closes, then the next closest would be Riverdale, which, again, not terribly inconvenient for our citizens, but, or it could be Roy, right?
Or they go to Ogden,
Or they're going down.
because that one will probably stay open.
Anyway, just looking for some direction. The Terrace would like to just get a sense of what we feel, and they will update their proposal to the county to say, hey, here's where we're at, working with South Ogden, and, because the answer so far has been, no, you're already getting the funding that was coming to our center, and we feel that's enough. But now with the county going through all of this, making the centers compete for their dollars, it's,
And Washington Terrace pays, they have the building, they maintain the building, they pay utilities for the building, they contribute.
But to Matt's point, when we closed our senior center and they got really all of that funding from our previous senior center, they had more fun, and I don't know whether the county spreads it out equitably or not, but if we closed ours and they gave them our resources because they were going to be servicing our citizens, it's kind of a rock and a hard place. I don't know if we should just pitch in more money with, to Councilmember Stewart's point, the fact that they could just raise it up again. And they may close it anyways.
I guess I would say at this point, it sounds like whether they got all of what they used to spend here at this center, it's not gonna be that way in the future, cause it sounds like they're splitting it evenly in the future. I don't like,
No more to give.
yeah, I don't like how the county is. I feel like they've backed the cities into a corner, and I don't appreciate that. I do feel like we need to meet the need for our seniors, as we're able, and I think 15,000 is able, we're able. But I don't like how the county has done it. I don't appreciate that.
But if we didn't give them the 15,000, would be the bad guys.
Right.
Right.
And
Which
if
is-
the county came and closed it anyways, then they would probably be the bad guys too, or they'd say that we didn't give them more money to keep it open. So it's really a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, and the
Right.
terrace has been very vocal as well about pushing back on the county. Even I read a newsletter article that they sent to their citizens that at least one commissioner was not exactly happy with, because they put the blame where the blame should really be. And
Councilmember Smythe?
Was there anything in that article that I read talking about changing the title? That's what,
Oh.
that was just some little incidental.
yeah, he kind of threw that in there, like if it would make a difference, that maybe you
Yeah,
could
I'm-
name it something
Why?
different, because the, what is it called, North View, is like North Ogden and Pleasant View's North View. So I'm like,
And then ours would be
South Terrace?
the terrace view.
I don't know that that's a big deal to us as a
Terrace.
city, but I think he kind of added that, like, hey, if that'll help sell it to South Ogden, maybe that's a,
Maybe that
Naming
would be
rights, yeah, it
appreciated.
means everything
I
to
Naming
just
right.
didn't see
We
what
want it to be called-
significance that was.
we want it to be called the South Ogden Senior Center.
I do have several questions, Mayor. Number one, can we put a cap for a couple of years, saying our $15,000, that's what we're going to pay for the next 2 or 3 years, and that would be, at least we would send them a message that you may increase your values, but this is all that's going to come from South Ogden. The other question I have, and I think it's Councilman Stewart brought this up, is that we need to know what programs they're having, because if they don't have effective programs that assist our seniors or any of our citizens, then we're just throwing money away at that. And what involvement do we have in that senior citizen? Do we have participation from South Ogden in governing that aspect there?
So we wouldn't really have any responsibility in governing. But there is talk about the city's hiring the director. I think we'd still leave that to the county, but they do have really good programs there. A lot of our residents do go there.
Okay.
And I do think,
It's
similar to the
used.
skate discussion, that we would have some kind of an MOU, an agreement with Washington Terrace. And I'm sure as a part of that, the Terrace would say, or like included in that, and it would be reasonable for them to say that there could be a CPI type of an adjustment each year on the funding. That's very common, right? To say, hey, look, we'll give you 15 year one, and then we'll look at a CPI indicator in January of every year, and we'll adjust the budget accordingly. Because costs will continue to go up for the Terrace to maintain their building and everything else. But I think through that kind of an MOU, we could also have some reporting requirements to say, hey, if we're going to contribute more now to the center, would like quarterly reports from the center back to you in a council meeting that says, hey, let me just give a report on, here's what our programming is, here's how we're doing. I mean, whatever you would want as a council, we could build that into
I
the
think
agreement.
value in knowing how many of our citizens used it.
I
Because
just
if we
text
only
Mayor
have-
Allen. I think Mayor Allen will have that information. I just text him. We'll see if he
They
gets
haven't-
back to me.
They didn't have it when we had the first meeting. They said they didn't compile that information.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of centers keep track. There was one, I think it's Riverdale.
Roy
that-
did.
Is it Roy? There's one that does keep,
Even if they had a log at the main desk
yeah.
of those
think they
coming
usually do.
in, they could indicate which city they come from.
Yeah.
It's very easy to acquire that. But I
I
think
think most of them do.
if we indicate that we'll be willing to pay the 15,000, but going forward may be a question, that may send a message to the Weber County Commission to say, there may not be any more money from South Ogden to contribute. You may have to dip a little deeper into your budget to fund it.
Well, if conceptually, because again, this won't impact our budget until next fiscal year. And I don't even know if I'm comfortable pinning down 15,000. Like, if conceptually you're on board to say, we think we'd like to contribute, then I can let the terrace know, and we can sharpen our pencils and see, is 15 going to be enough? Is 15 more than we might need to contribute to make it viable, and then come back to you through probably an interlocal agreement through the terrace with a final number so that we can justify, because that math was really rough by Weber Human Services, just to give us a ballpark. So if I'm hearing support to move forward, we'll go to that next step. Again, nothing will be locked in until you enter into the agreement with the terrace to contribute, but at least they know that we're going to be working towards that.
If I remember correctly, at our meeting, the first meeting, the Roy had things down pretty pat. I mean, they really had the system working well. And if they could pattern after the best use. In fact, I asked the director to say, who has the best practice? Show us who has the best practice, and she never did answer. So,
Would it be worth drafting a strongly worded letter, maybe even combined with Washington Terrace, to the commissioners?
Mr. Dixon's already sent multiple.
Okay.
I could send you an email that I saw.
I'm just wondering, I'd be happy to tag along and forward the email back to them and say,
Yeah.
listen, guys, like,
I really don't know at this point, because even at WACOG last night, Mayor Porter and some others, Mayor Allen as well, these points have been made, and the
time and time again.
commissioners are still just,
We give more than most, we give a lot, and they do give a lot.
Yeah.
Just still feel like it's,
It just seems like we
aging
keep
as a
cutting
county,
seniors,
so.
things we do for seniors.
And it's
And
not
we
a,
need to think about.
it's not a short-term solution, but the representative from Blake Moore's office was there. She heard it. She even spoke and said, thanks for letting me know. I wasn't aware that the federal government's funding has not grown in 12 years, so said we'll have a meeting on that, so.
I think we ought to look at also that our figures need to be more precise and clear of who's attending, how many's attending, what the cost is on that. It seems to me from the report here from the council that Roy has a program that we could look at and pattern after as being very effective and accountable to the situation.
Terrace has a really good program. And more of our residents go there than came here, because there's more people, there's more things happening.
and part of our pushback to the county is Weber Human Services understands senior services, because the county wants to turn it all over to us. They wanted us to hire the personnel, us to train them, us to man, and we're like, whoa, right? And so to your point, I'm a little nervous about getting
Numbers.
into the weeds too deeply on this, because that's the direction the commissioners would really like us to go, to say, hey, if you want to micromanage the programming, you just take it.
Yeah.
And our pushback was, no, we're not.
You're the experts in this.
You're the experts, you understand. And
They get the
So
funding.
what would happen if the cities eliminated their participation in senior center services and put it back on the county?
They'd close
Would they
them.
just eliminate it?
They'd close them.
Probably
they'd consolidate.
They'd keep
to-
2 or 3 open,
They'd
and
keep
that's
2 or
about it.
3 open and take all the funding and just focus it on a couple of locations. Okay, we'll go to the next step, and we'll get better numbers and come back.
Okay, thank you. Want to talk budget for 6 minutes?
We've got the next meeting. So the next meeting is the public hearing for the truth in taxation, but after the public hearing, It's also on, we can talk about the budget, so I don't see a reason to get started for 5 minutes. And then
Okay.
we can just wait till the public hearing and then get into the budget.
Okay. Entertain a motion then that we close our meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Mayor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. You're voted. Done. As well, any direction to the city manager,
Oh, good call.
anything you need me to look at, give it to me afterwards.
No, my bad. I should have done that. We had time for that.
You did move pretty fast, and so you didn't want to do the reports or direction to the city.
I just used to this being a work session, and so we're just done,
Okay.
so.
And just checking.
I'm okay to open it back up, speak later. So this is from Mayor Allen. I said, do you have the numbers of how many South Ogden residents use your senior center? So we don't know exactly, we only know our residents. I think I recall hearing that approximately 30% of our daily attendants are Washington Terrace residents. So the other 70% are
So,
from.
but they're still getting them from Riverdale and
surrounding
elsewhere,
cities.
yeah.
Everywhere, yeah.
Entertain a motion that we begin.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
We'll begin with a moment of silence. After that, Councilmember Howe will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 2 is a public hearing to receive and consider comments on the following items: the possible increase in South Island City's portion of property taxes, and also the fiscal year 2025 budget. Entertain a motion that we open our public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Anybody in chambers like to come to, before we make that, let me talk a little about all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So, the property tax increase is approximately 3% from what the county rate would be. Because of what our rate was last year, though, from what the rate the residents were paying last year on the average home in South Ogden, which is $485,000, it's $1.83 more per year, which is about 15 cents a month. But if you project it from what the county rate is, what we could have gone to without an increase, then it's approximately $18 per year, which is $1 and change each month. And so the council over the years has decided to go through the truth and taxation process. I think this is the 5th or 6th year in a row to hold the rate or similar to what the rate was the year before, for small incremental increases to keep up with inflation and the cost of providing the services to the city. So if any in chambers would like to make comments, those watching online, we're online. Online, just put public hearing and your comments as if you were here, and we will give you until 6:15 to do that. And we'll continue with our meeting, and then at 6:15 we'll read any of those comments that come via Facebook, YouTube. Okay. Anybody want to address the council? Okay, entertain a motion that we close the public hearing here, leave it online until 6:15, and continue with our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, our first discussion item is possible increase, and we probably shouldn't do that yet until we're done with public comment. We'll start talking about the fiscal year 2025 budget. We'll invite Peter up and Mr. Dixon and talk budget.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Excited to continue to work with you, and it's good to see all of you here tonight. Thank you. Really just, for the most part, wanted to go through a few more of our processes, maybe beyond 2 weeks from now. I think a lot of our focus is going to be on hopefully adopting the working budget 2 weeks from now officially. So we appreciate your engagement in that process for sure. And then there's of course always some housekeeping items that really in some ways can wait till after we adopt the budget officially. And I think there's some prudence in saying, you know, we want to put these things before you, but we don't want to make any drastic changes before, you know, hopefully we expect that we've addressed concerns of what we would adopt 2 weeks from now overall. But Matt has a couple of files that I've shared with him that we might give some reminders about and just go over at least a high level. So really, we met with Police Chief Park and Chief West about, you know, their needs and ongoing budget increase needs. And of course, certainly those are very real needs. I think you think about it, I heard about the bad accident last night that they responded to, and didn't even really think that much about it until I asked Brandon about it. And I think it's just important that we don't take their services for granted, of course, and I'm sure it's a good reminder for all of us that they have needs. And we have, in looking at our acting budget notes, just a few items that I wanted to remind us about. Do you mind pulling that up, Matt? That's this one. Yeah. And with these items, of course, a lot of these were incremental requests to the budget of where it stands right now today, and essentially what we would intend to approve 2 weeks from now. First of all, I wanted to talk about progress made on these notes. The first item on here was the planner, and our assistant city manager has been interviewing people for that position. So we really appreciate your support in kind of looking at the numbers and making what I feel like was a very prudent decision in that space. And we'll keep you updated when that person is hired and brought on board. And just in talking to Police Chief Park, these were some of their asks for this year. And certainly we've kind of put our directors not really on notice, just reminding them that we're trying to close out the last fiscal year budget and get our finances up to date so that we know exactly where we are on some of these capital project requests going forward. And we've asked for some of their patience on these larger requests, certainly, so that we can have a nice finger on the pulse of exactly where we are from a capital budget standpoint. Chief Park definitely wanted to emphasize one of their main requests was to make an office specialist that is on staff, really more than a half-time employee right now. And we priced that out, of course, at $45,500 to make that individual full-time. Then you can kind of see the other requests, and I don't want to, I really only want to remind the council about these requests because they've been spoken about by my predecessor in more detail.
Councilmember
Certainly.
Stewart has a comment.
Yep, please.
Just a couple of questions for you, actually.
Please.
So the 45,000, is that including benefits?
Yes, it would include benefits, and that's a major portion of the increased cost.
Okay. And then also there's a note about crossing guards. Changing from the number that we have now up to 5. I'm wondering if that number increase is still needed if the school will still be busing for this year?
Yes, that number is still needed, and we talked about, Chief Park, to tell you the truth, that was his number one ask, and he wants to give those individuals an increase as well so that they can keep them.
Chief Park, is that correct now that the
Yeah.
Birch Creek busing has changed?
Firefighters are only getting $21.18 an hour.
Peter, let Chief talk to that real quick while we're on it.
That's disgusting.
Yep.
So the school has given us leeway on the crossing guard for one more year. So
So
there will
we-
be, there are the 4
$40
guards,
make more than
and we do have a backup
I don't
guard
just
person,
hired
so
a
the
new
total of
hygienist
5 in
this
that
summer.
regard as far as the salary increases. But dedicated crossing guards will remain at 4 for the coming school year, but next year they are gonna be 5.
But
And that
would like
changed
the
during
salary increase though as well
Yeah.
this year.
And that changed during the budget process, so that's why it still reflects 5. We just got the information not in a recent past.
That's fine.
Thank you for remembering that, Councilman Stewart. And then our fire department talked to you about this groove bid. I thought maybe I was going to have to talk to that a little bit, but thank you for listening to that process. And Brandon and I were joking that neither one of us are techies, so we appreciate your support on that one. Then the next item on here is just, there's always a push for an additional firefighter, and really, it's a problem in talking to Brandon. You know, they have one station where they can really only give one person the day off on one of their 3 shifts, and because they just don't have coverage in excess of that. So really, again, just reiterating some of these as reminders of things that we've talked about previously. Let me give you a quick update on the Tier 2 URS contributions as well. We're still kind of feeling out from other entities what their plans were going forward. Summer and I are still getting up to speed fully on everything that this would entail. My predecessor had an estimate that funding this increase for public safety would cost about $78,400, which isn't quite in the budget yet. And I don't want to belittle this at all, but obviously it can be addressed after we adopt the budget in 2 weeks still, as can really any of these items as far as that goes. And I think everyone here is aware that the fire truck was approved by ARPA funds. And with that, I think,
Hey, Mayor,
yeah. any
maybe we ought
questions
to
or
explain
comments?
what a Tier 2 does. What's the reason for that?
Sure. So, Tier 1 employees have an earlier hire date than Tier 2 employees. So the Tier 2 system essentially is a reduced overall retirement and pension benefit, mostly for liquidity reasons and funding purposes for entities down the road. It's a little bit more accommodating to the long-term liquidity of an organization, but the fact that these Tier 2 employees who already are in a system that's not as generous as the Tier 1 system are essentially being stuck with these additional increased costs that right now the employees have to pay. And so the bill was written to allow municipalities and governments to cover the increase for public safety individuals specifically. And it's just something we have to budget for. Of course, I'm sure it caught us off guard to a degree, but it is something that's very much on their minds, because they in some ways feel like it's an increased cost to them that hopefully we would consider picking up in some way. But you know, we're here to give you the information, and tonight we're really kind of here to tell you we're still gathering more information about it, and would love to get more feedback and direction from the council on where they stand.
So the additional cost, is that the health insurance that they're paying?
Yes, most of it is retirement benefit, actually, so,
It's all retirement. yeah.
Yep. thank you for clarifying that.
Yes,
So-
Councilmember Smythe.
I have a question, going back to the fire department. Do we have candidates for that? Has there been any application for
So-
that position, or?
Mayor, if I could, so these are some budget notes that Steve had started working on, and now Peter, of course, is picking up. As you look at these, most of what's on here is not built into the current budget.
Yeah. And
But
that's
these were
what,
just requests that were made to make you aware of some of the requests, but these have not been included in the budget. So if there is an item on here that any of you feel like, hey, I think we should really talk about it tonight, because I think we should address this or that,
Okay.
that's where we're at.
I just have a heartburn about the $21 an hour. Can't we even increase that to get, I mean, I think that's pretty minimal for a firefighter. I mean, that's right out of school, right out of the gate. But, to get people in, I see other entities offering so much more for a position that doesn't put their life on the line,
Well, we certainly try to be competitive. I think this city, with the support of the elected officials over the last several years, has done a lot. I agree, you could look at some of these starting wages and go, man, right? But I could tell you that our starting wages are competitive within the market, and our departments have the leeway as well to, based on the applicant's experience, that they can hire at higher than that beginning wage. If they have the experience to justify coming in instead of a step 1, maybe they come in at a step 3 or 4.
Good.
Thank you for asking.
That makes me feel better.
I just want to be sure the council knew that that's what we're looking at here. This, Peter, I don't think any of this has been built into the current budget, but given that in 2 weeks, we're hoping to have a mostly final budget, if there's anything on this list that you want, like Peter mentioned, with the capital outlay, the requests, the departments do have lists they're compiling about, hey, here's some capital needs that we have. Until our financials are caught up, which we've got a plan to do that sooner than later. We're going to get some help to come in with Peter to get those caught up. Then we'll be in a much better position to say, okay, city council, here's where we're at. Here's what we think would be a good number to allocate towards capital outlay. If you want to do that, then we'll work with the department. So we're kind of letting the departments know we're just going to put pause on that discussion until our financial statements are up to date. And that's kind of our feeling with some of these requests, even on the screen, is, here's some of the needs that the departments have brought forward. And if you as a council want to have additional discussion about any of these tonight, we can certainly do that. And certainly in 2 weeks before we finalize the budget. But again, finalize the budget in 2 weeks. In 3 weeks, you can open the budget and make amendments and changes if you want.
So while there's a little pause, there was no public comment online for the public hearing, so that is now closed, and no comments.
Thank you, Mayor.
Where do you want to go, Peter?
I think, wanted to talk about a couple different utility rate scenarios and see if there's other information we need to gather in that space and whatnot. So, of course, I think this might feel like a little bit of fatigue with regard to, talking about utility rates, because I know that you had these discussions last year. A lot of it is somewhat new to me, but I feel like I'm grasping it and kind of seeing where the direction that it is headed, essentially. So we just want to walk you through 2 different scenarios with regard to a potential increase in the utility rate, and just ballparking it to take the temperature of the room a little bit, and just remind the council that, of course, we have many water projects that we went through a couple weeks ago, certainly, and we have some retained earnings there that we can rely upon, but it does mean it's worth considering whether or not we need to generate additional revenue to make up for some of those one-time costs, for sure, because we at our last meeting, we did actually table a $900,000 project, just pushed it out into FY 2026. And I think everyone was okay with that, frankly, on our end, as far as that goes. But, so, looking at this first scenario,
Mr. Dixon, will you get that as, enlarge that as large as practical?
Yeah.
There's a request from Mr. Howard. Mayor can see it just fine.
with my glasses on.
no doubt.
Just a message.
So this first model is actually asking for just modeling out an increase from the base rate of $14.33 to $16, and it includes under 4,000 gallons and an 11% increase in the usage ladder, except at the level 1 usage, so the lowest resident. So everyone essentially would have an increased base fee under this scenario, as well as in the ladder increase, basically, they would have, beyond tier 2 in the ladder, they would have an 11% increase. So what we kind of wanted to highlight here is this certainly would generate some additional revenue, but the increased monthly cost of the bill in this scenario would be 3% or $1.67 of the current bill for a 1,500 gallon user. So keep in mind, we're not, this is not a comprehensive approach per se. This is using anecdotes for different scenarios for typical customers. So if you go down to customer number 2, this would be representative of an 8,500 gallon user, and essentially the big difference here, you'll see the 11% increase that Matt has circled for the latter tier increases, and we might have to get used to each other's vernacular a little bit. So correct me or stop me if you don't understand. Or especially if I'm using the wrong term, please correct me. But in this scenario, this would equate to about a 4% increase for the customer and a $4.14 monthly increase. And then, so again, those first 2 tiers in our fee schedule represent about 85% of all utility ratepayers. So this is, and that's kind of why we separated it here. So this first page is representative of customers in those first 2 tiers, and then we would move to tiers 3 and 4, which are certainly much larger increases, but a much smaller representative population of the total ratepayers. So in this scenario 3, we're looking at a 16,500 gallon user who would pay $8.23 more, or a 4% increase. And the last scenario, which is just a tiny fraction of our total payers, frankly, like less than 2% was my predecessor's estimate. But for commercial use, really the highest users of our water, and that's when, of course, I don't want to get into an ecological discussion, but obviously they're the biggest users of the resource, for sure. But a $73 increase in their monthly bill, but still only 4%. I would say, you'll see as we walk through this model that this would generate, a rough estimate is about $240,000 in
For
this
the year?
scenario.
For the year.
Correct. And I think the question was asked in the last meeting, basically what percentage of our revenue is fixed and what percentage of it is collected through those variable rates. You know, and with 5,400 fee payers paying that base rate, that equates to about $928,000. And our revenue annually from the utilities, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, is between 1.9 and 2.1 million. So about half of the total collections, just under half, is coming through the base rate. So that's why it's so important to include the base rate in these discussions. I'm really interested in the theory of how much these ladders affect usage, and I mean, that's fascinating to me to get into, and I think we'll do some more work on that. In fact, I'm gonna get with our software vendor this week and see what additional reporting we might have available to us to gather more of that data, because it's pretty interesting to me to see, especially to look at a customer, you know, when our rate increase goes into effect, what impact did that actually have on usage in these ladders, and how much did that change our variable collections? So I'm excited to share that with you when we can get it. So let me pause there for a second, and we'll see what kind of interest there is in walking through this next scenario. But so the next scenario would be a $17.91 increase, which is more indicative of the large increase that we recently had, as well as an 11% ladder increase at every level, including level 1.
So, Peter, you said
yeah.
a $17.91 increase.
Sorry,
The base rate will go from $14.33 to $17.91.
Thank you for correcting me, Matt. So I'd go back and listen to the audio and freak out probably about misleading. So in this scenario, the first tier individual was $1.67 in the first scenario. In this one, the monthly increase would be $3.74, and then the second tier would go from $4.14 to $6.05 on this increase. And then we actually developed a silly little calculator if anyone really wants to geek out on this, and we'll refine it a little bit more and even share it with you, frankly, so that you can play with this, because I bet you're really excited to do that. I understand who the geek in the room is. Sorry, guys, but the key here is, in this scenario, it would generate certainly a lot more revenue. $375,000 if you scroll to the bottom there, Matt. And again, this is a rough estimate that I want to true up a little bit better as I get a little bit more familiar with the data. But certainly, the second scenario is a lot more excessive than the first one, too, as far as impact on the customer and their monthly bill. It's interesting that our property tax increase had almost no effect, but it does behoove us to look at our costs, the capital projects that are before us, and see if we have an appetite or a dire need to look at some of these scenarios in more depth. And certainly I'm not asking for anyone to make a decision yet tonight, because I'm learning still. Keep that in mind. But I think these discussions are productive to the idea of what would this scenario do, what would be the impact to the public, and how requisite is it that we do something. And I think I can answer that question a little bit better for you as time goes on. But really want to really pitch it back to the council and see if there's questions or comments about this.
Peter, I was just going to say thank you, because I had requested that you had broke this down and gave us some options, and it is helpful to me to be able to see it broke down into different scenarios. I wouldn't use the word geeked out, for me at least. I know that the mayor was getting a little geeked out. He likes that. But no, this was helpful, and I appreciate it. And I know it's extra time for you, but this helps. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman Howard.
Peter, this one's at 5%, the last one you're giving? A 5% increase?
Yes, and that
Wh-
would
what-
be the commercial group.
Is that the commercial?
That's the users that use 146,000 gallons a month.
So that's the larger use.
The other group is 5% as well, and 5%. I'm questioning the math, because on the lower tier, it would be 6% because it's a higher percentage of the smaller bill.
That's my understanding, yes.
So is that the residential use then?
Yes.
That's the
That's
low water
6%.
users.
Yeah, low users is user group 1, and then group 2 is,
Probably mid-size family, 8,500 gallons,
Yeah.
pretty good size.
Okay.
It's the widow up there.
And that's the base salary that's being
One or two.
asked to be increased.
the
Is that
base
right?
rate, yep.
Maybe 3,
Yeah.
the maximum.
So- Certainly, I think there's some truth to the fact that we need to, I personally need to true up a more accurate projection of exactly how much revenue this would generate. I feel like we're in the ballpark, plus or minus, 20 grand or so, but you can hold me to that next time, but of course, I didn't develop the model, so I'm excited to do more with it.
You just want to play with spreadsheets?
Yes, you know it.
Mayor? I guess just to point out, it's easy to look at this first scenario where we're increasing the base rate and the tiered rates to approximately a 4% overall impact. I think it's 3% on the smaller user. And realize that generates approximately $241,000 a year. Seems like a lot until you have to go fix a water line or put in a new water line to keep up with our system improvements. And I think it's just important because obviously we would all agree $241,000 is a pretty good chunk of money, but when you consider how far will that go when John says, hey, I need to replace a water line that we're having lots of breaks and constantly trying to dig up the road and repair it, it's time to replace it. It doesn't go real far, but anyway, so that's plus or minus 20 grand, is that what we're saying? On the first scenario, the second scenario generates 375,000.
Well, keep in mind, the more roads we pave, the more water lines we fix, because while the road's off, we fix the water line. So.
Not only that, but we're an aging city, and there's a lot of pipes that are busting now.
One of my questions, maybe Mr. Dixon, is what would the results be? So these usage fees are paid by all water users, right? Everybody from somebody that's renting a condo across the street to the widow that's over on Adams, right? Would it be any benefit, and this is just thinking about a revenue increase for the city, would it be any benefit to not do the property tax as significant and increase these more, where we'd have more users paying those fees? I'd rather not property tax the widow as much because she's not going to use as much water. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the challenge is just general fund versus
True.
enterprise
Yeah,
fund,
yeah.
right? And we can't take enterprise fund monies to go fix a
Go fix a
street.
water.
And the other factor in that, and when we talked about this when we did our road improvement fee, is, yeah, do we just increase property tax? But hospitals, churches, schools, they don't pay property tax per se.
Right.
But they do pay utility fees. And they use a lot of water. They use a lot of people driving to and from those places for our roads. And so we felt if you put on the utility bill, then that's in a sense spreading it out more as well.
Well, and that's what I'm saying.
Property tax, so
I would
there's two
rather
different
increase the
factors for
utility
that.
bill. It seems to have a greater impact to the revenue for the city versus increasing a property tax. But Matt, to your point, they do go in different buckets.
So what would be helpful tonight, Mayor, just get a general sense, again, you can finalize utility rates at any time, right? You can adjust utility rates, but for the sake of trying to firm up a budget in 2 weeks, any direction you have as a council tonight, if you're leaning one way or the other, then it would be helpful, because then Peter could work to refine things and crunch some final numbers for the next meeting.
Personally, I was, and I was just discussing this, but I think the 6% is too high. I'm leaning towards the 3%. That's where I would go.
Can we compromise on 4?
Yeah, I thought that too.
Yeah, I love the I love the dollar amount in the 6%, right? But on the flip side, it's just another tax, right? It's just another way to tax the citizens, and I don't want to do that. But I think costs of things have gone up. You know, ask John last time he went and bought a water pipe how much it was versus 10 years ago. You know, so I think there is some reasoning behind increasing those. I mean, we're just talking about budgets for hiring people. You know, firefighters cost more, and although this isn't that money, but
Yeah, I'd go to 4.
yeah, I think that's probably, I'd like to see that.
Okay.
I agree with Councilman Howard that 6% is probably a little beyond the scope there. But also, if we have a system, we need to build into that system methods of conservation. Because if people use less water, then they'll pay less utilities. If they use more water, then they'll pay more. But you know, we're always looking at ways that we can build that into the system where we can help you, especially the fixed income.
Well, and that's the problem
category.
with conservation, though, is it actually decreases those revenues.
It does.
We want to be water-wise, right? But
That
probably
that's-
even more reason that the percentages need to be increased a little bit.
Yeah, that's the dilemma that we're in, but I think 6% is exceeding the limit on that, so.
Councilmember Stewart?
I like the first scenario better than the second. Personally, I understand the need to bring in the revenue to take care of the projects, but I would like to have the least impact as possible on the lowest users. And so I understand the base rate has benefit, but I would like to have it at the lower increase, not the higher increase.
Mayor, can I point out just something that, so, Peter, all of these scenarios, we are just talking about that increase to our water,
That's true.
right? So it's not a 4% increase to water, sewer, storm.
Right.
It's specific to water, just to be clear, so we know what we're talking about. Okay.
That was an
So
important
we
clarification.
we
Thanks.
had some support for 4% with a counter idea of the lower 3%.
4 is good for me. I can manage that.
Okay.
I could go with the 4, but I would like the
Stick with 3.
base rate to be the lower amount. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? So,
Let me scroll up.
if the base rate was 16,
Yeah.
and then tier it,
Can you zoom in a little bit
there
more?
you're talking about a 12% increase on usage ladder. So maybe it would have to be a 12% to
Oh,
get
I
you
see.
to the,
Okay.
but I want that lowest user to be the least impacted as possible.
So don't put as much on the base fee. maybe skew it more towards usage ladder to
Or
still get the 4%.
Something to, I really wanna, as much as possible, keep those people
Okay.
not.
So you could
not
go to the
heavily
$16
impacted.
But I think the
base
base-
fee and then reduce the.
I think changing the
under
base rate
3,000.
actually does less to impact their water bill. Because base rate's only one tier, it's base rate. Everything else, if you increase the percentage based on their tier, then they're gonna pay more than the 4%. Because the base rate's fixed.
Okay, say that a different way.
You've been in my sales trainings, haven't you?
No.
So if let's say you increase the percentage of the tier, it's gonna impact their bill more than if you just do the fixed increase on the base rate.
Except in scenario 1, it says that it didn't change the, it didn't
rate.
change the rate on that tier 1.
It just changed the base rate.
It just changed.
So would you like to see, so that $1.43 per first, that, to go lower? So the first 3,000 gallons is at a lower rate?
I guess I hadn't thought about that option, but that would be fine.
So this is the usage
That would offset that a
calculation
little bit.
on that first tier, and it did not change. So it just included
Base
the
rate.
$1.70 or dollar something bump in the base. Whereas down here,
Still the same.
no, that's the sewer. So down here, we're going, those are the amounts that
That's where the
changed.
adjustment was. versus the-
8,500 gallons there, though.
Yeah.
Right. So the first scenario shows that the only change to their bill would be the base rate. The
Correct.
second scenario says it would affect all of it plus the base. Correct?
Yes, because you got the 16
And so I'm saying
base
let's
rate plus
leave,
adjustment.
But if you didn't do that, that's the majority of our users, and you would,
well, first and second.
yeah, but what's, first is probably 80%, yeah, 85%.
80% you think are under 4,000
Yeah.
gallons.
That's what we talked about last,
I thought it was first and second, because that would be like, John can correct me if I'm getting this number wrong, but I thought he said something like 6,000 is, maybe a 5-person household or something.
yeah, but even if it's
No.
half of that 85 or a third of that 85, you're seriously decreasing your revenues on that.
Yeah, I believe the number we were using was 85% of tier 1 and tier 2 for our customers, but
For both of those tiers,
Right.
not just,
But again, even if
but
it's
it's.
30% of the tier 1, that's less than half of the 85, right? You have to increase one or the other. You can't leave it the same.
which is why I said, go ahead and increase the base rate if you have to.
Oh, I thought you said don't increase the base rate.
No,
Because we didn't,
because the first scenario changes the base rate for everyone,
right,
but it doesn't change the cost for the first 4,000 gallons.
right.
3,000.
No, 4,000 is the.
So are you saying you're okay with the 4% on everything except for tier 1? And what do you want to do for tier 1?
Leave it where it's at,
Yeah, I think that's the wrong idea.
okay?
If that's like a half of our city or more, then.
Yeah, even if it's a third of your city.
Be much coming in.
Yeah.
Well, you've increased the base fee.
You just said leave it alone.
Okay,
That-
the scenario up here shows that you increase the base fee and the usage rate you leave alone.
Right.
Right.
And so what do you want to do? That?
That.
Oh,
What scenario?
then I'm
one
okay with
shows?
that. I thought you said leave them both alone.
No.
Okay.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, good. That's not a bad idea.
Okay.
You're just talking about impacting that first tier less, but it's kind of like using program 1 for tier 1 and then program 2 to a lesser amount for the rest of them.
Well, based on these numbers, right, that tier 1 is approximately a 3%.
Yeah, so
Where
that would
the
remain at
other-
3%.
The other user groups as that 4%? Because they're getting that extra bump in the usage ladders that the first group does not. So maybe that's the point, Councilmember Stewart, you're making is, let's just leave that scenario where the lower users, it's just a 3% hit, so to speak,
did-
increase. Where
Then I would suggest we split the difference on those higher users, the higher income ones, and put them at 5%, because in scenario 2, they're at 6%. So if we left the first one at 3 and do at least tier 3 and 4 at 5%, that would split the difference between the two programs.
Was $16 exactly 3%? Someone's have a problem with round numbers. It looks like we
Right.
just picked a number.
It was a round number, certainly. It was-
So, I just think hey, we'll just pick a number instead of,
It's less than.
we'll calculate it, it's 3%, it's gonna give us this much, that's what we need. I just think it looks better if it's 1598, 1603. I mean, then it looks like,
Because we're looking at the total utility
We did.
bill to get to 3%,
right,
of
or
course.
whatever, 4%, whatever we're going to.
That makes sense.
Just never looks good when we're like, oh, we just picked a number. We just picked a nice round number. I mean, it's good for us, but.
So to Councilmember Howell's last thoughts around
3 and 5.
3 and 5, and that 3,
Tier 1.
Was tier 2 also 4%, Matt, on
yeah,
that first
it
one?
was, yeah. So do we leave these two alone and then bump the other users to 5? Or do we just
I'd be
leave,
amenable to
Seems
that.
pretty equitable.
leave the?
I'd be amenable to that. It's still an increase.
Well, we can run those, run that
3 and 5.
scenario and come back next meeting. Again, if at next meeting you're not prepared to make a decision, then the budget will move forward with the current rates the way they are, and once we get to a point where you're ready, but if you're ready, great, we'll just adopt it as a part of the budget and we'll move forward. Peter, do you have any other questions we need
No, I'm-
answered?
Very grateful for the feedback and questions and even corrections. Thank you. That was my last item as well.
I guess just Mayor, any other just general thoughts about the budget or any specific areas of the budget you want to revisit or have more discussion about before the next meeting where, just about said Steve, or Peter
It's
can
okay. It's a compliment.
make any adjustments
Good.
between now and then.
If you do, you can bring them up as we go here also. We still want to talk about the property tax
Okay.
increase.
Okay.
Peter, want to lead us through possible increase in the portion of property taxes?
Sure.
And I don't think we need to justify what we do here. I think we've got a great thing going where we do small incremental steps instead of just big ones every few years. But I was reading today, now I can't find it. Just some of the other numbers floating around here, that Harrisville City's a 5.1. No, I mean, I do like to compare, see what other people are doing. Ogden's a 5.3, North Ogden 9.5, Pleasant View 18.4, and Roy at a 13.8. So, and it's I hear at every group mayor meeting I go to, they say, "I wish we were like South Ogden, just did it every year and just do it little," because it kills them when they do these huge percentages. They go years and years. Yeah, I got one tonight.
Yeah.
And the other thing that came to me too with these is, say you don't raise taxes for 8 years, and then you have a big tax increase. That resident that moved here 7 years after that now is paying for what the other people didn't have to pay for 6 years. I mean, it's just so much more equitable to little by little, pay as we go, keep up with inflation and those kinds of things. And I just think it gives us till August. We get the financials in through June. We have a better idea where we stand. I just think it's the easy way out to just be like, no one likes a tax increase. We're not going to do it. We're not going to have any heat versus, we're going to do a little bit every year, try to maintain our rate, try to keep up with inflation so that we're not just zapping people with this huge increase after not doing anything for so many years because we were afraid. So my compliments to the council for that. We started that years ago and how we've kept doing that. I just think it's wise, and the other cities wish they were us. I hear it all the time.
Mayor, I'm not an advocate of increasing taxes, but every time each year that I receive my property tax, I anticipate that there's going to be an increase. That it hasn't, in the preceding years, it hasn't failed me. I just anticipate that, but I think we ought to, and I like what the mayor said, is that we're using our opportunity of looking at the property tax. We're not up 4, 5, we're 5, 6, 10%. We do it in small steps at 3%, which is a more workable aspect of the property tax. But I anticipate each year that I'd like to pay less, but I know it's going to be more each and every year. It's just common knowledge on that.
And I think we'll see. There's some growth and some other things coming, and maybe we won't need to do it every year. It could be every other year. But I just like that we go through the process and really analyze it and look at it every year. So.
We haven't had any.
Yeah, I think the maintenance approach is very good. If you don't need to do something, sure, but looking at it is certainly very important. So, what in the packet, and this will be online as well, of course. So, the certified rate, as we discussed, is 0.002500, and the city's proposed rate is 0.002507. And essentially, I love that the mayor touched on a lot of these portions, because, of course, the Weber County total tax rate is a lot of that money goes many, many different places. We only get a fraction of that pie ultimately. So it's really easy to, be real excited about the very nominal increase this year. But I think obviously we need to understand it's not going to be like that every single year. But so for a homeowner with an average home price of $473,000, the monthly increase at the far right will be 15 cents more per month. And then I actually misread this the first time. I'm like, why does the next tier go down? No, it doesn't. So that's a lower amount, 350,000, then 400,000, 13 cents, and all the way down to $1 million property at 32 cents increase per month. I mean, it's great that nobody's really pushing back at these increases, because 5 years and have it 5 times higher, that would be a miserable approach for a lot of us, certainly. And then at the bottom you'll see the percent change in the county's rate. Of course, the county's rate was reduced ever so slightly, so that what was published in the paper is still hard to talk to, but they were publishing our increase in relation to the decrease that the county was proposing. And so we want to keep our funding levels consistent and keep our services at a consistent level. And I think it would just be bad form to not acknowledge the inflationary costs associated with that. So thanks for letting me talk through that.
And I appreciate, Peter, just for the public's benefit, the way truth in taxation is the reported increase is not between what a resident would have paid last year compared to what they will pay under the proposal. Truth in taxation, I don't know that I agree with it, but the way it's written, it's what would they pay if you just took the county's rate versus taking the new proposed rate? And that's where the 3% comes into play. But when you look at it like we did it here above, between what did a resident pay last year under the rate compared to what they'll pay this year under the rate, that's where you get the 15 cents on an average home per month. But that's not the calculus that Truth in Taxation would say. They're saying, no, it's a 3% increase, because if you do nothing, your rate will drop to the 0.02434. So I think just, in being fully transparent for the public's benefit, that's why the notice said 3%. But if you do the math between what you paid last year and what you'll pay this year, it's not 3%. It's much less. But that's what the state law requires us to, how it's required of us to report it.
So much more clear, a lot more.
I think
easily
most
put in
of
there.
us think about, well, what did I pay last year and how much more do I need to pay this year?
That's all we care about, isn't it, for the most part?
Well,
So-
our house goes up in value, so it might be a little bit more.
Okay.
So the revenue value that we collect will be 188,000 or 133?
188.
188.
Thank you.
So that's what we would collect as the revenue for the property. That's not a
More
a
than the year
large-
before.
That's not a large amount of money,
No.
188,000.
Again, see prior comments about the value of doing this every year. It would be easy to say, this isn't much of an increase, 15 cents a month, let's just not even do it. It's $188,000 in an inflationary economy that we're losing buying power of those dollars every day. And it compounds year after year. And so, again, that it adds up when you look at what it costs us to have the personnel that we have and the equipment it takes, and it's an expensive operation, but
So the plan is to put that in the final budget, that increase to the, where's my notes? To the .002507, unless three of you think otherwise. The plan will be to go to that new rate.
and that is what is in the acting budget, is that percentage.
Okay. Peter, thank you.
Thank you.
Fine, John. So this meeting is supposed to be solely the truth and taxation and the budget? Can we add anything else? Okay.
Can I ask one question?
Please.
Peter? Well done, thank you.
Oh, one more question, Peter.
Just looking at the numbers for total revenue and for current year actual, that's way up.
Let's see, I gotta get to the packet, give me just a sec.
Okay.
Total, you're looking at total revenues?
Yeah, on
The-
page 3 of the budget.
20 million. Yeah,
So it's page 54 of the packet?
right there?
Yes.
I can blow that up for whoever.
So I'm just looking at current year actual compared to future year budget, and it looks like there's a pretty big difference. Just wondering if you can give us any information on that.
I believe this includes all of the revenue transfers is what's going on there. So that's essentially what you're seeing there with the 20 million. But I'm happy to.
Well, the 11's super low. How are we going to get from 11 up to 20?
So, yeah,
Is that what
part
the
of,
question is?
yes, part of what I'm looking at is in 22-23 actual, it was 16.8. Current year budget, 23-24 budget was 19.9, but 23-24 actual is listed at 11.8. So I'm just wondering,
No,
that's,
you're right.
But we haven't-
just
we
a
haven't
couple
closed out
months
the
behind on the revenue.
Yeah,
and
we haven't closed out
closing
the year,
books.
though.
Yeah, but it is very significant, so thank you for bringing it to our attention, so.
And I think as we get those monthly financials caught up, that year-to-date actual number will be.
And do you anticipate that'll be completed before 2 weeks?
No.
No, okay.
Let me highlight this number as well on my screen. Recall that last year, as well as the year before, Steve started at the end of the fiscal year when we open our budget to make year-end adjustments in order to prevent what we had previously as a finding in our audit going over the fund balance percentage that the state allows. Steve started adding an amendment to the budget to transfer so much money from the general fund to the capital projects fund. This is where those monies are coming back into our budget from the capital projects fund. And you can do that. There's nothing shady about saying, hey, look, we've got some monies that we shouldn't keep in the general fund because it might put us over our allowed percentage of fund balance we can carry over. So let's budget a transfer to put it into capital projects because we can use that money for a capital project. This is just showing you where those monies are coming back into the budget. And then if you go through and you look at the expenditure items, you'll see where it's going to be paid out. Some of this is going to be then allocated for certain parks projects and other things in the budget. But it's very much a little bit of, hey, let's take that money and put it over here until we need it, and then we'll bring it back in and allocate it to get some projects done. Those kinds of transfers can also impact the total, that 20 million versus 11 are items like that from year to year when you transfer monies and then bring them back in. But that kind of stands out as well, where it's like 0, 0. Wow, we're bringing $2 million into the general fund from capital projects. Well, that's because for the last few years, you've pushed money from the general fund over there, knowing that we're going to have some projects that we need to get done. And anyway, hope that is somewhat helpful.
It is. Thank you, Matt.
Good job, actually.
Okay,
Okay,
all right. Thank you much, Peter. All right, entertain a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.